with this shutdown and unrest, we estimate it's costing Apple roughly $1 billion a week in lost iPhone sales. He said that the high demand this weekend just gone, the Black Friday weekend, for iPhones could cause shortages of the product in the run-up to Christmas. So this is just one example of how COVID in China is impacting businesses and supply chains here in the US. But you've got general concerns about US businesses operating in China, that actually China could be becoming a less and less attractive place to do business in.
In other news, Iran has arrested the niece of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei after she called for the world to cut ties with Tehran. Farideh Murakami, a well-known rights activist, condemned the government for its violent crackdown on protests over the death of a young woman in police custody. A video that was shared on social media by her brother and other activists called the Iranian government a murderous and child-killing regime. Ms. Murakami is an engineer whose late father was a prominent opposition figure married to Ayatollah Khamenei's sister. Activists say 450 protesters have been killed in more than 2 months of nationwide unrest, triggered by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. She was detained for failing to wear the hijab properly. Many of those who died were minors. Some 18,000 people have also been detained by authorities. Observers say the demonstrations pose one of the strongest challenges to Iran's leadership since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Canada has launched its long-awaited Indo-Pacific strategy. It has vowed to deal with what it called a destructive China, outlining spending of some $1.7 billion to boost its military presence and cybersecurity in the region. And the plan, detailed in a 26-page document, mentions China more than 50 times. It also details plans to tighten foreign investment rules to protect intellectual property and prevent Chinese state-owned firms from snapping up critical mineral supplies.
China is an increasingly disruptive global power. And as India, the world's largest democracy, becomes the most populous country in the world, its strategic importance and leadership will only increase. The North Pacific, our neighborhood alongside Japan and South Korea, is facing real security threats from North Korea as it continues reckless missile launches, and from China, who continues to challenge international norms.
Natural ties have been frosty between Canada and China. Tensions soared in 2018 after Canadian police detained a senior Huawei Technologies executive, and Beijing subsequently arrested 2 Canadians on spying charges. All 3 were released last year, but ties remain sour. And remember, just earlier this month, President Xi Jinping confronted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau over alleged leaks of their conversation at the G20 summit in Bali. Observers say Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy underscores Ottawa's dilemma in forging closer ties with Beijing, and that's because bridging the divide will offer significant opportunities for Canadian exporters, but comes as China looks to shape an international order that Ottawa sees as divergent from its own interests. An update on a catastrophic landslide that struck the southern Italian island of Ischia over the weekend. Rescuers are continuing their search for several people still missing. Authorities say at least 7 people have been killed. The fatal incident has sparked growing anger over years of rampant illegal construction that contributed to the disaster. Frustration is also mounting over the reluctance of some politicians to address the issue. Now, dozens of emergency workers were rushed to the island while rescue divers searched the waters off the port of Casamicio Terme. Authorities say weather conditions are complicating the search. A wave of mud, debris, and stones broke away from the island's highest mountain on Saturday and crashed down over houses and roads in and around the town. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government has announced a state of emergency. Some $2 million have been set aside, the first tranche of a fund that will be spent on repairing the damage. But for many, the move is too little, too late.
L'unica cosa che un po' mi rattrista, che ecco, nel 2009 c'è stata questa frana dove c'è stata una vittima, nel 2022 la stessa frana è stata è avvenuta nello stesso posto e hanno fatto delle bonifiche. Allora io dico, ma gli amministratori, ma perché non fate il vostro dovere come lo faccio io e come lo stanno facendo questi ragazzi?
Is here is a volcanic island.